Grid Alliance is a proud sponsor of Public Power Underground, a subsidiary of NextEra Energy and the leading transmission company in North America. Grid Alliance is a transmission-only utility company that's more than just wires. With operations in 3 regional transmission organizations, Grid Alliance works with electric cooperatives and municipal utilities to create collaborative solutions that integrate renewable energy and improve the reliability and resiliency of the electric grid. Learn more at gridalliance.com. That's GRIDLIANCE.com.
We started in hard times to bring us all in, into the laughter through thick and through thin, for public power enthusiasts without and within. Roll on, enthusiasts, roll on.
Welcome to a special recording of Public Power Underground in a windowless conference room at NWPPA's 83rd Annual Conference and Membership Meeting in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm Paul Dockery, the host of Public Power Underground and Senior Manager of Energy Resource Strategy and Planning for Seattle City Light. Joining me for this informal conversation are 3 energy enthusiasts like me. First is Ben Serrurier, who works for Fervo Energy on government affairs and policy. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Paul.
Welcome.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
You presented today at the conference about super hot rocks and how to crack them.
Yeah, we're in a windowless room. We're talking energy. Feels appropriate.
Feels good, right?
Yeah.
Feels like this is where we belong.
Feels good.
Joining Ben and I is Lea Fisher, and a Northwest energy expert and senior project manager for GDS Associates. Hi, Lea.
Hi, happy to be here.
We were talking about this yesterday. I think you may have had back-to-back appearances on Public Power Underground where, Lea, you were the celebrity guest star, and then Ben, you were the celebrity guest star.
Dynamic duo.
They were great. They were back-to-back great episodes.
First time meeting in person, though, here at the conference.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yes, it was, and it is. And lastly, joining us is Matthew Schroettnig, a Public Power Underground special correspondent. You've never been a celebrity guest star?
I have never been a celebrity guest star.
Because you're part of you're one of the stars. You're one of the star correspondents.
That may be the nicest thing you've ever said to me, Paul.
Yeah. Well, man, I feel like I've given you better compliments than that. Matt is the Director of Operations and General Counsel for Northwest Requirements Utilities. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Paul.
We already had some good banter, but hello anyway.
I am super excited to be here, and thanks very much for having me back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation because we're going to try out a new segment called Half-Baked Ideas. It's inspired by a Bill Simmons segment with Kevin Wild. For those of you who, like me, listen to sports podcasts, you may get that reference. My enjoyment of the segment is mostly about the discussion of maybe good ideas, maybe bad ideas, that at least highlight some interesting angle or aspect. So we're looking for maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's a bad idea. Haven't thought it all the way through. And then we're going to kind of think it through. Or not. Maybe somebody will just make fun of the idea, which I suspect Ben's going to make fun of some of my ideas. They're half-baked because the ideas end up being like when one of the contestants in the Great British Bake Off misjudges. You watch the Great British Bake Off?
Every single episode.
Yes. And this happens,
Wow.
right? Mm-hmm. Where they misjudge the amount of time it's going to take to do something. And then they just have to make it look good with frosting. It ends up half-baked. It ends up being somewhat cringeworthy because when they get to the judges' table, you know they're going to get a bad judgment. We're not looking for the cringe. We're really looking for the dialogue around whether it's good or not. Does that make sense?
But I think we do want to avoid the soggy bottom if we can.
We got to avoid the soggy
So
bottom.
the soggy bottom is like the ultimate fear in that show, right? It's like the pies. You just can't do the soggy bottom.
I mean, it's a crossover here, but I'm reminded of the Ted Lasso scene where May is dancing around, poor little cake, soggy bottom.
I don't remember.
You're going to have to put that in post.
We're going to put that in post. I do blind bake my pie shells now because of the Great British Bake Off. I was like, I didn't know this was a thing.
Now,
I was making pies without blind baking the crust, and now I know better.
Do you have the clay beads that you put in or the metal beads that you put in, or do you just use like dry beans like a pedestrian?
I use dry beans like a pedestrian.
I got suckered in. I got that Amazon purchase to prove it.
Yep.
Yeah. I've wandered into the wrong podcast.
No, this is the right kind of podcast because they're half-baked ideas. So that's what we're doing here. We're floating energy industry or energy industry adjacent ideas that maybe we're too embarrassed to float on Energy Twitter, but we're comfortable here because it's a podcast, super low stakes. I have a list. We all have, I think, lists of 3 maybe good ideas, maybe terrible ideas, maybe okay ideas. I hope we all feel comfortable bringing up those lists. We may not get through all 3 of them. We'll go through one at a time. Be enthusiastic, be compassionate, be charitable, also be honest. We aren't
It's hard
British
to be all of
judges
those
here.
things at the same time.
They aren't.
sometimes.
We aren't British judges here, right? I mean, maybe Matt is. No, you're not.
No.
Good. Okay. So Ben, I'm going to start with you. Notoriously, super hot rocks are not a half-baked idea. They're very baked.
Yeah, and there's a whole baking, geothermal bread baking joke I can make here, which I won't.
Okay.
But just know that that's a pathway we could have taken.
That you took a different path.
Yeah.
You took a different path. Can
Yeah.
you? Let's start. We all have our list. Give us one of the ideas on your list. Half-baked idea.
I have an idea for a KISO rebrand.
Okay.
All right, it's the ISO you know and love. But say you're a KISO, say you're having trouble selling your ISO to an Intermountain West. Maybe,
For instance, maybe.
For instance,
maybe.
asking for
not,
friends.
not that there's anything.
Maybe, what if you changed your name to the Cowboy ISO? You don't even need to change the data coding, right? CISO. It's right there. The Cowboy ISO.
Are you saying that
Who says
KISO,
no? Who says no?
Are you saying KISO use CISO for their data coding instead of CAISO?
Yeah, because it's 4 acronyms.
That's right.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Okay.
Sir, I didn't know that.
I thought it was weird too. I was
Branding
like,
is
CISO, what is that?
CAISO, but the data side,
Yeah.
he's right.
So
These are
those
things
those
I didn't-
Excel files just transfer right over. You know?
Okay.
No need to update anything. You're now the Cowboy ISO. I think legally some of those Intermountain West states are obligated to sign up if that's true.
There may be legislation already on the
You're the
subject.
lawyer.
Yeah, I know very little about the existing legislation in
It's a
the Mountain
half-baked
West
idea.
states.
Who says no?
Who says no?
Who says no? Does California say no? You are a Californian.
Oh,
Are you
this is
a
a
Californian?
podcast. Don't just put that out there.
Are you a Californian?
Yes.
You live in California.
I was born and raised in the Bay Area. That's
Okay,
right.
I didn't know that. Okay. Does California say no?
So far they have, yes. Yes. I think
Each and every time I text them
objectively,
this.
yeah.
Have you thought about the logo, how that would change with Cowboy
that'd be
ISO?
good.
I have lots of thoughts, but
See?
it's your idea.
No,
so.
no. This is where it
Yeah.
needs to generate steam. It's
I think
going
I
to
see a
start
top
here.
hat, the cowboy hat, and there's like maybe a grid element in there, but there's places that could go.
Yeah, like an
lasso is the grid.
HVDC tower, like wearing a cowboy hat.
Yeah.
With the wires as the lasso?
Yes.
Yes.
It's got a little El Paso going on there. I like that.
Yeah.
Electric company.
Is that what El Paso Electric Company does? They have.
Well,
Well,
I
they-
think they have that cool logo.
Yeah,
Just says
their
the electric
logo is
company.
the same as
Oh.
the Electric Company, the old PBS show.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm impressed you guys know El Paso's logo. I don't.
I think it's probably because they spend too much time on Twitter.
I have an extensive knowledge of useless information.
Yeah. If it's irrelevant, I probably have it at hand. I do think that we might be operating under the mistaken assumption that the only reason they haven't joined is the name.
I see no other reason.
Fair.
Price
Okay.
formation, governments.
Well, that's it. And
Renewables integration.
I'm with you.
Hasn't
It's
come
just
up
the
yet.
name.
it's
The
just
name
been-
keeps coming out
it's
every
just been the
crisis.
name.
You are onto something, though, that the name doesn't help.
And
The
with,
name
and
doesn't.
with Cowpoke ISO, you've basically, there's a nominative determinism aspect of it. It's inevitably
Oh, now
going
I'm
to be.
in the wrong podcast.
So, sorry.
Nominative determinism.
You've heard the expression, right?
I have. I heard it. Don't remember what it means.
That your destiny is predetermined by your name, right? So look at Tom Hanks' sons. You name one Colin, you end up with a Colin. The other one's named Chet. He's definitely a Chet, right?
Big Chet energy.
Exactly. Cowpoke, inevitably going to end up with an Intermountain West participation.
That's right.
Okay. Great start to half-baked ideas. Lea, do you want to follow up on that half-baked idea
Yeah,
with one
that
of your
one was
half-baked
really
ideas?
fun. This one, so it's called Kids and Grids.
Kids and grids.
And I will say, so of my 3 ideas, it kind of starts warm and fuzzy, and then we get like real draconian and dark pretty quick.
Okay.
We'll start,
I'm into this. Yes.
we'll start nice and fuzzy. So, okay, especially here at the conference, I feel like we've heard so much about how getting transmission built, like that's one of our key challenges today,
Yes, it is.
for sure. And I would say one of the reasons that's a challenge, not the whole reason, is people, right? Like, we just know that there's not enough human resources to be doing this work, from, transmission queue to actually like building the transmission and resources. And so as I thought about this, I think there's an element here where I feel like there's a PR branding issue we have in our industry,
Yes.
right? So when I tell someone I work in energy, they kind of glaze over. Like, there's just all of that. Like, no one says when they're a kid, like, I want to grow up and I want to work in the energy industry, right? It's like, it's a fireman, it's a doctor, it's all these things. So I think we need to be better at that, because we do have a really essential role, for sure, right? I mean, when we think about like reliability and
Mission,
blackouts,
purpose.
like,
Yeah, we got great.
there are really big impacts to something like that occurring.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can be like an energy industry expert that saves lives. Like, this is all, like, we just got to do more with the branding here. So I think it's partially branding for kids and just getting that message out there. What does it mean to work in the energy industry? And then even beyond that, like, more education at the primary level for kids about what the heck this industry is. Like, what do we do here? Why is it cool? Why is it exciting and interesting? Why is it relevant and important? So Kids and Grids is branding to kids, more about the benefits of working in this industry, why it's important, and then adding it into their actual education and curriculum.
I like it. Kids and Grids.
Kids and Grids.
And it's all educating,
It's a good name.
indoctrinating.
Kids and Grids is
A
a
little
great name.
education, but a little like marketing. So, there's a combo there.
Totally. My 4-year-old niece, I would love to get her like a little, HVDC connect-a set situation. She's got the Lincoln Logs, but Lincoln Logs does not have a power component to it.
Right.
I don't need
Not
power
yet.
engineering.
Famously not electrified.
Well, yeah, but you can't get the kids excited about an unelectrified cottage in the woods.
It's true.
Where's the power lines?
Yeah.
Like, bring your mom or dad to work day, right? Like, nobody wants, like, right now, right, it's not exciting, like, well, my mom that works on the energy issues, but we got to fix that, because it is exciting.
But the like going to see like an ISO board, like if you go into like the control room,
The control rooms
really
are
cool.
really cool.
that's straight up NASA stuff.
Yep.
Some field trips that
That's
are focused
cool.
on this.
I mean,
Yep,
you have to
yep.
go to Folsom or wherever, but that's cool.
But then you get to leave.
Field trip.
The dams are really cool.
So
Where
to
the
make
holes
this a little
fall.
bit more,
Where
to
the
make this a
holes.
little bit more, I think it's like we need to get in touch with the creators of Bluey and then have Bluey have an episode that's focused on energy.
I think we'd have to figure out how to.
good stuff.
So
How to get them
you
back.
and I have
where
talked
we-
about this, right? So I think Ben is once again in the wrong podcast. But Bluey, a children's show, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. Yeah, Bandit, the dad, is an archaeologist.
Yep.
Dogs dig up and bury bones. Chili, the mom, works at the TSA, drug sniffing dog or bomb sniffing dog or what have you. So we'd have to try and find a crossover for the grid that would apply to dogs in order to kind of keep that theme alive for Bluey. I think that would help with the pitch. Or we could just create a brand new show. I
What
don't know.
type of dog would work on
Yeah,
the grid?
yeah, I
It'd be
don't
a
know.
cat to like.
That's not a type of dog at all.
I didn't type of dog at all.
We got to keep
Probably
baking
doesn't
that one.
work.
We got to
I'm
keep
not a-
baking that one.
I was wondering where you're
I'm
going.
not a
Be cat.
veterinarian, but
I need to plug here. The geothermal industry does have a children's book.
Oh, it does.
That's impressive.
Yes. Our friends over at Baseload Capital, which is a Swedish-based but international finance and development organization, have published a children's book called Our Hidden Powers. I believe it's available on Amazon and wherever fine energy-related children's books are sold.
And hopefully in the show notes, if I can remember to find it and put it in the show notes.
That's great. I mean, we should maybe have one that's,
our hidden powers.
Our Hidden Powers.
Yeah.
Yep.
The sooner we can convince kids that they just need to be electricians or work on power policy, utility regulation, then the better. We just need more people. Okay, another great half-baked idea. Matt, what do you got for us? Anything?
Where do I even start? So, you familiar with the Kardashev scale?
Nope.
Okay,
Don't know
cool.
what that means.
I don't even know if I want to go down that path. So, Russian, I want to say astrophysicist. I don't even know if that's accurate. But guy created a scale that would kind of identify how advanced a civilization was based on how much of the energy of its solar system or galaxy it was capturing. That didn't necessarily just get, quote unquote wasted. And
Curious.
so there are different levels. Level 1 is basically where we are today, where we've been for the past 100 years or so. Level 2 would be we're able to harness all of the output of the sun. And a level 3 civilization, I think, in theory, is able to harness all of the energy that is produced in their galaxy.
Holy cow.
Which is a lot, and that's not what I'm proposing. That would be less than half-baked, I'd submit. Now, what I am proposing is kind of a twofold idea here. So we've seen we've seen space solar referred to in various IRPs throughout the West recently, and I think that there's something to be said for geosynchronous or satellites in geosynchronous orbit that are able to basically get solar energy 24/7. You don't got to worry about the neck of the duck, right? But what you do have to worry about is how you get that energy back home. We don't want a bunch of wires coming down. That seems dangerous, I think.
It does seem dangerous.
For planes and birds and people. So first, we need a space elevator. There's going to be a lot of benefits of this. Obviously, escaping the gravity well, launch would be a heck of a lot easier. We would have the ability to hopefully clean up what's out there right now. So you'd be mining all of the existing satellites that are otherwise just going to fall to the Earth at some point. Asteroid mining, all that good stuff. But more importantly, be able to collect the energy from those space solar satellites and actually transmit it down on, the HVDC that we mentioned earlier that we could then turn into something a kid could build.
So
it's a lot.
Can you help me out with? Okay, so
Well, the space idea, that space solar is fully baked in the
Space
sense
solar
that there
fully
are
baked.
executed PPAs for space solar.
does that make something fully baked when you have an executed PPA? That's when it's fully baked, not when it actually happens. Just when you get a PPA on something.
But see, I don't think that's not the half baked part. I think it's the space elevator,
Space elevator.
or it's the
Well-
transmission, or it's the wireless transmission.
So that's you're reading ahead. That's a different one of my half-baked ideas.
You could use
This is all the half baked ideas in
wireless-
one project. Then.
Yeah, but I was actually wondering if you were going to go with we can use the other half-baked idea because
Well, so the
maybe there's
wireless
multiple-
transmission aspect of it, the idea here is that the space elevator would provide a focal point for all of these various space solar satellites, one central location for them through whatever lasers they use today. I'd feel silly saying X-ray lasers are how they transmit their energy, but I'm pretty sure that's how they actually get their energy.
For what?
From the solar satellites. That's how they transmit the energy to Earth. We've already got executed PPAs, or at least in theory.
Is that the half-baked idea?
Not in
of how
theory.
those
It's matter of
solar-
public record. Pacific Gas and Electric in 2009
Nobody's taking for your word on
executed
this.
a 200 megawatt space solar PPA.
My point is,
CPC website. Put it in the show notes.
You're gonna.
It's microwaves, I believe.
I love that.
Maybe we'll find that.
Microwaves and
we'll put that in the show notes too.
Microwave lasers, then. That's what it is.
Okay.
Not X-ray lasers.
Okay.
But the idea being that there would be a central focal point. We're not going to have to worry about actually transmitting that to Earth and potentially, something moves and all of a sudden, your neighbors are getting baked. You don't want that, particularly given the fact that it's microwaves.
I got to be honest, Matt. This idea sounds pretty baked.
So space elevators, I had no concept of it until, spoiler alert, I read the three-body problem, and they have a space elevator in the three-body problem. And I don't really get it. The idea is you just build a tall enough structure that it gets out of the gravity well. Is that the idea? Is that what a space elevator is?
Effectively. There's more to it just in that it's harder. It's kind of hard to do.
What does the space elevator do? So we've got the PPA, and what does the space elevator
So
do?
two functions in this case, right? So far as the half-baked idea is concerned and the solar is concerned, it acts as a central focal point for all of these satellites to transmit the energy that they have collected through their solar panels.
Right.
And then there would just be a wire in the middle,
So it's a
presumably.
corridor?
It's the transmission also.
Exactly.
So they transmit, they collect it back to the space elevator, and it's got some HVDC.
Bingo. Because, the biggest hurdle, I should say, one of the really big hurdles with space solar is getting the energy from this
space.
satellite, from space. I feel so silly saying space so many times. Down to Earth, down to terrestrial
I keep thinking about a kid's book for this.
consumers.
Though. Come on, space, right? Everyone wants. Kids love space.
The
Space
final
is the energy.
frontier.
Space, the energy frontier.
The energy front, my God, this thing is going to sell itself.
So we're baking this here. Okay, I have a question. I don't know if
I
it's
have
serious
a lot
or
of
not.
questions.
Will depend on your y'all's reaction if this is a serious question or not. Okay, so geoengineering, they talk about putting mirrors into space. If I put solar panels into space, it functions similarly, right?
Only if you're getting in the way, right? So in theory, you can simply have solar panels in geosynchronous orbit on the sides of the Earth that are collecting sunlight that would not have gone anywhere near the Earth to begin with, right?
Interesting theory.
The purpose of the geoengineering mirrors that you're referring to are to reflect solar radiation that would have otherwise hit the planet and warmed it up.
Okay. I do want to just go straight to the wireless transmission, though, because we already talked about 50% of it.
Okay.
Did you want to talk more about the wireless transmission aspect?
So we're doing
We could do space elevate. We could do solar, space solar, wireless through an elevator. You could do that.
wireless through the elevator. Well, there would be no point at that point, right? Because you've got the infrastructure.
The point of the elevator. So let's just move on.
No, the point of the elevator is there you get multiple benefits from having built this thing, but
Because then it's easier to get the things up in space.
It's used and useful.
Exactly.
Used and useful.
And at that
Is
point,
that a term of art? Is that a FERC thing?
Forgot this is a public power podcast.
we're not.
to get cost
we're not
recovery
looking to
and
rate
rates.
base this thing, man. This is about the public benefit.
How
Look at that CapEx, though.
It's for everyone. Yeah,
So
no,
the
it would
rate
be
base is
really
bigger.
expensive. I mean, it would be like $1 trillion plus.
Okay.
So
Okay.
maybe we're not the right ones to do it,
With
but
that attitude.
Okay, the wireless transmission. This is on Earth. The wireless transmission.
yeah. So that was one of my other potentially less than half baked ideas with a soggy bottom. The fact is, back in 1901, you had Nikola Tesla out on Long Island with Wardenclyffe? I got to look at my notes. Tower. Did I get that right? I did get that right. Wardenclyffe Tower. He was working on the ability to basically take advantage of the Earth's latent frequencies in order to transmit electricity wirelessly, both off of the ionosphere, if I understand correctly, but then also just through terrestrial infrastructure, just the ground, because the Earth resonates at a particular frequency. And it worked, supposedly. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Okay.
But my whole point is this was over 120 years ago. Why the hell haven't we figured this out? The biggest hurdle that everybody speaks to with respect to decarbonization and integration of renewables and, all of the issues that we're dealing with right now with respect to generation and load imbalance and all of the problems we're trying to solve are transmission related in some way. If we had wireless transmission, this would not be a problem. We wouldn't have to worry about permitting reform if we didn't have to worry about putting steel in the ground and, dealing with these HVDC issues, right?
Do we think that's actually true? Because I would expect there to be some permitting process for these microwave paths. So maybe you avoid the land rights, land acquisition, but you like the permitting.
I mean,
we're still going to permit the microwave path, right?
If
Or
there
we're
is a
gonna
microwave path, right? Is that even necessary? That's why this is really probably
I don't
less than
know
that
how
big.
this
I don't
works.
know how it works either,
Okay.
but I think
Okay.
it should work,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Where I always go back in my head is Independence Day. The actor that played Data was all excited because when the aliens showed up, everything started turning itself on because they had wireless energy transfer.
I find that the most important part of me thinking that something should happen is not understanding it at all.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Well, we have wireless charging.
We have wireless charging.
It's apparently very inefficient, but it works. My toothbrush charges wirelessly. My phone, I guess, might be able to.
I'm gonna throw one of my half-baked ideas out now. It's district cooling. District cooling, great half-baked idea. We have district heat. It's very common in some parts of the world where you can use some of that beautiful thermal energy from the earth to do some work and useful stuff. District cooling, especially for areas where there is not currently a lot of high penetration of air conditioning, so you already have to invest a lot of new capital into like air conditioning for this as the world gets warmer, and more places will need air conditioning. So as you have these cities that maybe didn't need air conditioning before but are going to need it, district cooling is a new utility that could spring up that could provide some cooling capacity.
So I think
Cooling
district
capacity.
cooling is a thing.
I think this was already baked.
Well, it doesn't mean it's baked. Space solar PPA.
I think
But I do think it's a thing. Well, first of all, on individual buildings, I know there are actual commercial like skyscrapers that use ice,
yes.
and they freeze a big block of ice, and then they use the ice to cool air, water, what have you, and you use that to cool the building.
Yep.
So we're starting from a good place. One
Yes.
building, it too, it's a district.
It too is a district. Yes, absolutely. Is this a thing in Lake Ontario? I think as well.
There's a very big question mark on that one.
Toronto. I pulled up the article. It's right here. Toronto has a cooling project in operation. They call it Deep Lake Water Cooling System. When I was Googling my half-baked idea, I've ended up, this is already
That's
a thing.
interesting.
Because
We
it's
need a
like
heat
too
sink,
obvious.
right?
Like it wasn't.
No.
I was going
I
to
don't
say,
think
how
it's
do you
too
do this
obvious.
without a giant lake? And
I'm
I
just
don't know
saying,
how.
Maybe I know a city that has a giant body of water adjacent to it that
I mean,
also is
heat
increasing
pumps
the
are
need.
in this mode, right?
Yeah. And as Dr. Incropera would point out, air is a really inefficient heat transfer.
That's where I
medium.
was going to go with it. How do
So-
you do this? Are we going to have ductwork from a central facility to everybody's house like we used to?
Toss those evaporator coils into the body of water, and then you just run some stuff through it, and it cools it down. It's district cooling. That's what they did in Ontario, I think.
And you're
I'm
right that there's
very
more
much
of a need
simplifying
for it going forward. So maybe, even though it's baked or, it just hasn't been implemented as often.
I feel like
I
if-
think
been
the
there.
biggest challenge is this isn't the type of infrastructure project where it all has to be bespoke, right? Any district model all has to be custom engineering and bespoke. So it's a huge capital project.
it would be a huge
It has to be
capital
a
project.
utility.
I feel like ground sourced heat
And-
pumps for everyone is a better path forward.
It's a good question. Do you get economies of scale?
I don't think you do because air is such a poor.
But
Because it's not going to hold its
you're
temp.
getting economies of scale if it's district cooling, because if everybody has to drill their own ground source heat pump for their own, it's that's way inefficient. Everybody has to have their own. That's way more bespoke.
Relative
Leah,
of-
I'm gonna come back to you for
Okay,
another half-baked
okay.
idea if
Well,
you're ready for it.
What do we want? Do we want to keep it the progression of fuzzy
as
to
dark
dark
as
or just go
possible.
straight dark?
I'm gonna leave it
As
to
we
your
sit here in a
discretion.
windowless room.
All
Leave it
right,
to your
let's
discretion.
go dark. All right,
Okay.
this one's got a name too. So it's called Cut Me Off Conservation.
Ooh, this sounds like we're going really dark. Okay. Okay.
Might be a little controversial. All right, so let me kind of frame it up. So I work in the energy industry, and I will make a confession that even though that is the case, I am completely lazy when it comes to things like, leaving the room. Let's turn off the lights when we leave the room. That's a smart thing to do. That conserves energy. I don't do that. I should do that. Or like thinking about laundry, right? Like we all know it's probably better to do your laundry off peak. Using those appliances, do it off peak. It's a better idea. I don't do that either. So as I was thinking about conservation, I do think there's a good subset of people out there like myself, and I'm not talking about, when I go into this, I'm not talking about, essential electricity usage, right? So I'm not talking about like turn my lights off. I'm thinking about things like, if you have an EV, charging your EV, doing your dishes, doing your laundry. I suggest that all of that load, you could just cut me off. You could set me up with an app and say, this is the amount of usage you have left for the day. You can't do this. You can't do this laundry. You can't do this charging after X time in the afternoon or day, whatever it is. You could just cut me off, and I would be totally fine with that, as long as I have some notification. So it would have to be like an app or something that tells me, after this time, or like you could do it different ways. It could be like after a certain time you're cut off, or here's how much usage you have left for the day, then you're cut off. But you could cut me off. And like where it's different, I think, than like demand response, that requires me like through a program to opt in. This is simply saying, we have a problem and we as a society need to actually conserve, so we're going to be hard. We're just going to cut people off. You do not get a choice. Again, it's not, I'm not talking about like your lighting, but for things that are, discretionary, energy usage, a straight cutoff. And I personally, I don't think everyone, I would even be willing for someone to say, on this day, as long as I have a little bit of advance warning, we're going to cut you off for 4 hours. We're going to have no electricity, nothing. I would just play board games in the dark. I'd be totally fine with it. So I may be an anomaly there, but I think there are more people out there that would be willing just to have their usage cut off if it's not something that's essential and if they had a little forewarning. It's controversial. No one may agree with me.
It's a hot take. It is a really
rationing.
hot take.
I mean, it's
is
like-
there an opt-out so that if you're doing something and you get the notification, you can be like, not today?
You could set it up that way. What I'm saying is that there wouldn't be an opt-out. So it's
More
like
valuable if it's not, right?
Right. We're entering into this new paradigm where it's so important that I don't get an opt-out. Of course you would if it was for something like all of your electricity being turned off. But just to say you can no longer do laundry, I don't get an opt-out. I get a warning, but no opt-out.
So I think part of the issue with this level of selective choice is having the ability to respond in that way or to bifurcate your electricity usage like that. Like I was part of Ohm Connect, which is a residential demand response program in at least it's available in many areas of California.
And when you say that you were part of it, you participated?
I participated.
You were not working
I would
for
get
it,
a
you were not-
warning. No, I would get a warning or I'd get an alert from Home Connect, and they'd say super peak. If you reduce your usage from a baseline, and it's the baseline based on my apartment, it's gamified. I'd win some number of points or something, and I could train those points in for something. Anyway, I live in a small apartment, and so I had very little ability to actually turn off anything. And it's like if my fridge turned on, like at any point during the hour, I couldn't beat my baseline because it was my biggest electricity use. But I think so I just didn't have an ability to respond. However, there's all sorts of smart panels now, like SPAN and stuff like that. I don't know all this stuff.
SPAN is cool. I want one.
Could we get to a place where you could, like on your phone, just say like, look, Wi-Fi, I'm keeping that, but TV off, fridge off. You can choose like which things get opted in and out, and then you could really curtail this to your particular needs.
Or better yet,
that's a kinder way to
work
do
that
it.
into the smart meter so that the utility has the ability to do that on an aggregated basis.
Yeah, I would like to know, though.
Yeah, there would be time associated with it and so forth.
And I do think, one thing that I will acknowledge with this among many holes is that it would be very hard for folks to, participate in this if you didn't have a smartphone and you didn't have an app, and not everybody does. So like you can't, in order to go with this idea, you have to give someone warning that they're going to be cut off. So how do you give warning if someone doesn't have a smartphone and an app? So that's a challenge. So maybe, I don't know how you get around that.
With a lot of demand response stuff, I think, and we were talking about this the other night, like I think there's a framing difference. It's not that I'm getting cut off. It's that I am monetizing my flexibility. I'm creating my home into a grid asset, which is, at the end of the day, what anyone wants.
Is that what they want?
To optimize their electricity preferences for financial gain. That's why I got
in the
game.
circles you travel in and go in, that's what people want. They want to be able to change their life into a grid asset. There probably are people that do.
I like the optionality a lot. I still struggle a little bit with, it's just, I've got a visceral reaction to the idea that we are not obligated to ensure that everybody's got all the electricity they need 8760. But to the extent that there's a possibility of monetizing flexibility and being cut off, I think that's next. I mean, that's going to happen.
What I think this is saying is like, I appreciate your concern for my 8760 electricity usage. And I'm telling you that 8750 is going to be pretty cool. Like, I'll take that. I'd like that. Paul may not. But Paul can.
So you're saying you would like.
You can have 8770, you can have my extra 10.
You're saying 8750 is okay with you. That's your.
We have if there is a blanket assumption on every customer that they must have 100% 8760 to all their appliances, which is the governing assumption of the grid. And that has served us very well. I think but with technological advancement, could we have a choice now to say, hey, I will benefit the grid or something in some way, and I'll get remunerated for that, to not, like, I have consumer choice. to say, no, I actually don't have a need for 8760.
I mean, when you think about how we use our electricity in our homes, like we have more flexibility than we need. And I don't.
have no idea when my hot tub turns on.
I can't believe there's a hot tub. Yeah, holy cow.
Subtle.
Yeah.
We live in the Northwest. He has a hot tub.
No invite to this.
To go
I have a
back
hot
to
tub too.
Go back. And Leah has a hot tub too. But go back to your point, Leah.
She's willing to have
we
hers
use
turned
all
on.
this in some ways willy-nilly.
It's a cold plunge now.
And if you could,
Right. And I think, like I said, I think there is so many areas, even if it wasn't I think your idea where you're trying to, have people monetize and have choice, I think that's great. This one was kind of more we're in kind of draconian society and we really need to conserve. The time has passed for all of these options. I really like, Ben, your kind of idea, your path too, but this one is just saying we've got a lot of usage that really isn't necessary. And I think there are people that are probably hey, if I understand the issue, I would be totally okay with you taking measures that feel in today's world pretty extreme, just telling me I get cut off after a certain amount of
The
time.
benevolent load shed.
Exactly.
actually, that's where I was going to go, right? There's this utility. There's
the
the
branding
step of
today has
the
just been
reliability, externality, where I can always just shut off your load. That's my hedge against this thing. But yours is the step before. I'm not going to load shed indiscriminately. It's load shedding surgically.
Yeah.
I'm just picturing a bunch of sweating people in a control room being things are getting pretty tight. We better pull the plug on Leah's place.
We're going to turn off those freaking hot tubs. That's what we're going to turn off. Turn off the hot tubs.
No, I got Ben's extra 10, so I'm going to keep mine on.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, it's a good transition to one of my other half-baked ideas, and that is a text-to-bid for price responsive demand. We've had Dr. Kyrie Baker on twice on Public Power Underground, and both times I've asked her about this concept that she posed on Twitter about adopting the airline practice of if you want to offer how much you're willing to get paid to give up your seat on a plane. And so that is I think it's a really interesting experiment to think through how that could work for an electric utility. My only value add on this concept that she already kind of laid out and the airline already does is that you're as a utility, you're calculating the actual value you're willing to pay for a percentage of their load reduction. I think it's more intuitive for me as a customer to have you'll give me $5 to reduce 50% of my load than trying to be I'll give you $5 a megawatt hour or $50 a megawatt hour. If you could calculate on the back end, for that customer, how much you're willing to offer them to reduce by 50% for the next hour, then it becomes more intuitive for that customer to then be oh, that's worth it for me to unplug my hot tub. And one of my preferences around this type of stuff is to not rely too much on advanced technological advancement or advanced adoption of these smart devices. I think a lot of load for peak events is happening while people are home, and it's okay to rely on the person to go do something to get that value. So they could stop their dryer or stop charging their car, and also incorporating the respond back. If you don't want to shut off your power for $5, you can just bid back $20, and then you get price discovery on what is their value of keeping their power on. That's my half-baked idea. Text to bid, dollars for a percent.
I like it. The first thought that comes to mind, beyond that I like it because I do. So if I'm an average customer, would I know what 50% of my load is? That's the only thing that comes to my mind because if you were to say you can't do your dishes for the next hour, I think everyone can understand that. But 50% of my load,
Gotta let 'em soak.
I don't know if I would know. If I'm thinking about the average
Let's put them in the hot tub.
consumer.
Yep. The half-baked addition, the baking a little bit more to that is you include in your text message, 50% or $5 to reduce 50% of your load, which you could do by not using or turning off your dryer
Samples.
or unplugging your car or not running.
I consider
something,
myself
turning it
like
off.
just obnoxiously well informed about, like, to Ben's point earlier, like retail load side issues. I couldn't tell you anything about like what utilities in my home use, what percentage of the energy, my total energy consumption.
Yeah, which
So
is
this-
fine. But it's like,
do
I'll go
utilities-
turns my breaker off.
Would a utility, I'm looking at my utility brethren here, would a utility have that sort of information as to how much? Like, I just don't know.
It's a great
so
question.
Ohm
If
Connect,
you
I
have-
have to come back
if
to
you-
Ohm Connect because they do something similar to this in California, but they're bidding in a capacity product in California on your behalf, and then you have to respond and show up, and there's a
On an
performance
aggregated
component.
basis,
Yeah,
though.
and I get,
That's
if
the
I
key.
reduced more off the baseline, I would get rewarded more.
So
But it has to happen in aggregate because individual homes just not moving the needle unless you're in a really weird end of a feeder system where.
So I think
Things are
that's
pretty
one of the
dicey.
advantages of the utility is the meter data. And if you have good advanced meters, you probably do have access to just what that usage is.
Those are 5-minute
Currently.
ones, right? Isn't that like the smallest increment?
I think the really good ones are probably 5 minutes. The normal good ones are probably 15 minutes or an hour. But it does need to be, I think one of the values is if you have a live reading and you can send a text to all the really intense users at the time that have their hot tub running, that have their hot water heater running, like, and are using 24 kilowatts at the moment, and you can text that group of people. That's one of the values of being an electric utility and not being an Ohm Connect. You may have access to that information. One of the other benefits is if you're in the extreme cases and you're like at the price cap, for the utility, that's a lot of credit risk for whatever you're buying, right? That transactional credit risk. If you're doing it, and the other idea is like you settle it on the back end, like just on the bill with your customer, so you have way less credit risk. You're giving the value to your customer instead of some like generator that's the least efficient generator. If you're at the price cap and you're paying your customer the $5 and a bunch of your customers $5, it's, I think, a better solution. You can probably add some premiums above the wholesale price to account for like transmission and stuff.
I mean, what we're talking about here is demand response, which is a good idea, and we're doing more of it. And I feel like technology does enable greater granularity.
Actually, he's right. There are PPAs.
There
for
are
demand
PPAs
response.
for that, so it's
it's fully baked.
It's fully baked.
Yeah.
It's fully baked.
yeah, according to the lawyers.
Okay. It's fully
Legal
baked.
definition.
But so would you, I feel like it is fully baked, but not in like the way that you're describing it. So I'm still intrigued with it as an idea because,
I like the proactive part for sure.
yeah.
That's the part that worries me.
I like the price
everything
discovery
that
part.
requires
I think the
engagement.
the biggest value is if you can get price discovery on what they view their energy is worth at the moment. And is mainly one of the ideas, like sources of the idea, is when California sent out that text and they got the response. That's great. It's basically that, except for you're paying the people. That's the idea. When you send out that text, you actually pay the people. That's the whole idea. That's actually the whole idea.
And so you wouldn't just do it during like grid intense, like we're in a, an extreme weather condition. Would you save it for that? Or would you say like, no, this is something like on a day-to-day basis, we're giving you information and you can just help us out here and there?
It's for the former. I think it's the former.
Okay.
It only really works. You would only ever get a response to the dollar value when like you're at or near your price cap. Quite frankly, because really any like retail, like for an hour of energy use for actual residential customer, even at the price cap, it's like $5.
Yeah, so would it be
Maybe
worth
$20
it?
if you're using everything. And I'll give you $20 to just turn off. And you could get response from like, oh, I'll go run my generator, but I'm going to run my generator before the power goes off instead of after the power goes off, which is another value add. Like if you got,
Unless it's a diesel generator.
it's still a value add because they're going to run it anyway, but you're just not going to cause everybody else to go without the power.
Yeah, but if you assume that the utility has an obligation, then they should be planning accordingly, and those rolling blackouts shouldn't be a possibility in the first place.
Yeah, so it's only in the extreme events, and it's not the programmatic demand response. It is the
Like, hey man, sorry, can't hang out tonight. I'm staying home and calculating my value of lost load bid curve.
So it's like the utility's got to do it for you, right? And it's just a response. Oh, $5 for that? That's not me. I'll do it for 30. You know, there's no calculation. It's more of the gut response. Like, I'll text you back 30.
I don't even
do it
text for less than $10.
I think some people would have fun with this and enjoy it for like this very.
Oh yeah, and
like,
if you, no, that's free money.
Yeah, I'll do the $30, and I'll turn off my brakes. I'll go
Well, if
flip
they're
my
actually
main.
giving me $30, if it's $30 a megawatt hour, I'm okay.
Yeah, it's nothing, right? It's actually if it's
No,
$30.
literally, I don't use enough electricity. Like, stuff's getting efficient. Lights don't use that much. What am I gonna unplug my computer? Okay.
I'm gonna go flip my
Again,
breaker.
it's back. It's
you
the
wouldn't
fridge.
get the text. You wouldn't get the text. It'd only be the high.
Just another Friday night, no texts.
I don't believe that about you.
You're still sitting at home calculating your
Value
lost demand, but yeah.
Okay, that was my half-baked idea. Ben, do you have another one?
Yeah, I got one that's energy related, and then there's one that earlier today you called dumb. Paul,
You can just throw it out there. And I'll
do you want
call
the
it
do you want the
dumb
one
on
that's more
record.
substantive?
That was
so.
uncharacteristically blunt.
Well, it's a
I
trusting.
remember
Windows room.
being enthusiastic about it. I think you correctly interpret it as me and calling it dumb. I remember being enthusiastic about the idea.
It's true.
So you're both right.
So I'm gonna go with the energy one. So similar to demand response, and that's a real idea that is baked and is a thing. But I think we could do more of it. Connect and manage for interconnection. So this is kind of what ERCOT does. So it's kind of already baked in some ways. However, there's a lot of discussion around interconnection queues. There's a ton of projects sitting in queues. There's
We
a
don't
lot
have wireless.
and we haven't figured out wireless yet. Although Matt's going to solve that soon. And I saw a quote from CAISO the other week talking about how there was like 18 gigawatts of projects that were applying to interconnect to a single substation.
And a single substation.
And
I love it.
I was like, why? Okay, fine. Let them try to connect, and if they all get curtailed, then they all get curtailed. And we don't. Why aren't we seeing more connect and manage as a reform idea? As utilities and grid operators are putting increasingly onerous readiness requirements and financial deposits and stuff, which I just kind of tamp down the supply of electricity, which I don't think is what we're trying to do with new generation these days, right? We just need to bring on electricity that works, like connect and manage. Why isn't that not a bigger thing?
Can you differentiate for us the difference between, or at
Sorry,
least
there's investing. There's two different
Yeah.
approaches. There's invest and connect, which is we build all the transmission that's required to fully deliver the amount of electricity generated from the new project to where it's going. They pay for that up front, and some of it gets reimbursed if it's a network upgrade. Not to go into too many interconnection details, but that would be the invest and then connect.
Invest and connect.
The alternative approach might be to the project connects, and if the transmission service availability is not there for them to deliver their power to its destination, then they get curtailed, and that's a risk borne by the generator.
Yep. And this is notoriously well baked because Jacob Mays just published a paper about it that
Yes.
neither you or I have read yet, unless you read it last night.
I read the abstract earlier today
Okay.
to
In
make
his
sure I
defense, the
wasn't
tab
going.
is still open on his laptop.
Yeah, still open. Downloaded it. Shout out Jacob Mays.
Shout out Jacob Mays. It's getting more baked because I think there is an interest in trying to figure out policy techniques for overcoming our queue issues.
Yeah, and I guess it's
that's well
the
said.
baking of the ideas. Basically, just in this would be a good future show idea. Just talk through, especially in WEC. What does this mean for transmission planning and transmission service availability, resource adequacy programs? Like,
Chaos.
how does this change? Tomorrow we go connect and manage and let us all fend for ourselves. Like, I doubt there's going to be 18 gigawatts trying to connect to a single substation in California.
If you used a connect and manage approach where there would take on the obligation for all that.
I'm not saying
curtailment
it's
risk.
the solution necessarily, but I am interested. It is a different approach. It has shorter interconnection timelines in Texas. I'm sure they do it someplace else too.
I think they do it in Europe. I think that
Yes.
it has been on a prior podcast. I believe it was Rob Gramlich who talked about
Yeah,
Europe
that checks
having a connect and manage.
Ooh, you
approach.
dropped
It's
something
interesting.
there,
It's like
Paul.
you're adding efficiency on the one hand, but then you curtail, so you're like decreasing efficiency on the other hand. I don't know.
It's about who bears the risk of
Well, I
that,
don't think
right?
those projects would they're not going to get financed, right? Because there's too much risk of that. And so then it doesn't solve things because you still need to build the transmission. I think one of the ways it works in this scenario might be if you instead of having individual projects do that transmission planning and shoulder the cost of that transmission planning through the queue. Not a great transmission planning process. You do need to have broader cost-shared system planning that builds the backbone of the system that then allows projects to connect and they manage some of that curtailment risk themselves.
Yeah, I love it. Matt, did you have another one that you wanted to share? I
wanted to share?
I know Leah's other one that is less dark, and I really want to end there.
Okay. I'm happy to go next. I don't anticipate a whole lot of conversation around this one. So.
Okay, that's perfect. We can end on just a lightning round of bad ideas, and then Ben can get in on with his bad idea.
I mean, this whole segment has been a very slow lightning round of bad ideas. It
has not been a lightning round.
No, lighting round. Crypto as a battery.
Oh God, bad idea.
This is not the reception I was hoping for. So Bitcoin famously is not a battery, right? But it should
there's
be.
Like 10,000 accounts in my mentions that disagree with you, but
we can talk about that later.
We're not going to spend time now talking about it.
No, I do not think we should. Bitcoin is not a battery, but I do think it should be. I would like to set aside all of my previous comments with respect to a utility's obligation to serve and say, seeing as how cryptocurrency represents an increasing percentage of total gross consumption nationwide, worldwide, and yet somehow miraculously, simultaneously generates no societal value or benefit. I think that mandatory demand response programs
Here we go.
Right?
You prefaced it with, despite the fact that I said, so I won't go there.
No, that was me calling my hypocrisy out for all to see.
I love it.
So yeah, I think mandatory demand response programs for all crypto mining facilities. And as with all non-firm products, service can be curtailed with or without notice for any reason or no reason and without recourse. And I think that should be the first line. And then we can start texting people.
It's still not a battery. It's just it's just a lower level of service. Like it's still not a battery.
You're agreeing with me angrily.
My not great half-baked idea was that the best way to explain grids to kids is as jump rope. It's the best way to explain like how the whole grid works.
It's my favorite GIF, by the way.
Yeah, because like a kid jumping by themselves, like a microgrid, like you're in sync, you're controlling this thing by yourself. If you've ever seen, I remember when I was in like grade school, we'd watch these videos, they'd stick it in the VCR of jump rope competitions where it was like all these people in sync across gyms across America jumping rope. And the idea is if you get too many people jumping on a rope at once, it'll end up crashing the whole thing. They'll get out of sync. And the people swinging the ropes are like generators and the people jumping are like load. And that's my pitch. That's how I explain grid to my little kids. It's a half-baked idea.
Slower planes. All right, slower planes. So you've flown West Coast to East Coast. You're flying east. It's like a 5-hour flight. You're losing 3 hours. It's a red eye. This is a terrible flight. What if the plane went slower? So I can leave at a reasonable hour from the West Coast. I can arrive on the East Coast mid-morning, and I will have slept a full night, or at least 7 hours. Because like a 5-hour flight, you're reasonably getting 3 hours of crappy sleep, at best.
At best.
But why don't we have a slower plane? Why does it doesn't have to go 400 and 500 miles an hour, does it? Why not just slower planes?
I don't know, does
slower
it?
Planes.
I don't know, does it? Is that like a...
Well, I've been on a plane that's gone slower.
Okay.
So it's still flying, right?
How fast?
Aerospace?
I don't know.
I want your idea to solve for people that cannot sleep on planes, because this has no benefit to me because I cannot sleep on planes. So I need you to fix that problem. How do I sleep on a plane?
Why can't you sleep on the plane, though? Because I can't sleep on a plane because I'm 6'6", and they're built for very small people.
I can fall asleep in cars.
Yeah, I don't know if
just
the
fine.
listeners know this. Matt's very tall.
I don't know.
It's not something I advertise.
I think it's come up before on the podcast.
Has it?
Yeah, I think so. You don't, like... I'm not a fan of the slower plane because, like Leah, I can't sleep on a plane.
Well, the less demand for the tickets means it's going to be cheaper, which will be great for me.
Will that trade-off mean that you can have beds on the slower planes?
That's what I'm thinking, right? Well, this is really, by slower planes, I'm really talking like blimps. Like, how long would it take to go on a blimp? That might take too long,
I
actually.
think that
2
probably
days?
takes too long.
I'm not gonna lie. When I first read yours, when I first read this, my first thought was,
Rigid airships,
yeah, zeppelins,
dirigibles.
dirigibles. But then, I mean, this is not just the transmission of people or the transportation of people, but this could potentially also be hydrogen transportation from point A to point B. But then I remembered,
Flying hydrogen.
I mean, that's what a zeppelin is, right?
Oh, the humanity.
Problem being, of course, it's the least dense thing out there, and you wouldn't be moving much from A to B.
There's a theme here, though, between many of these ideas, beyond the marketing, is consumer optionality, price discovery, and being able to actualize those values. I would like to go slower. I would like that option. I think that many people are in my boat because I like to think of people as being like me. Different options on electricity usage.
Yep.
Optionality.
Competition.
Connecting it all together. Look at
Optionality
you.
is
Look
important.
at you connecting it all together. What a great star of a podcast. Okay, Leah,
Okay.
give us your last half-baked idea.
Yep. All right, it's got a tagline, of course. So opt-in, save the distribution lines, / there's 2 here, community infrastructure opt-in. So simple concept that is already baked in other constructs. So if you think about a green power program that a utility, investor-owned utility or public power may offer, where someone can opt in, right? Like
Okay.
purchase green power credits. So you could do this for distribution lines or other infrastructure in your community. So bear with me for a second. So we know that aging infrastructure is a huge problem, right? And we also know, like, anytime a utility is talking about the costs for that, super high, no utility wants to have to raise rates to recover costs if they don't have to. And so I think if you, again, we're going to marketing, and there may be like a kid element here too, if you can make the community infrastructure for the utility be something that people buy into, like, these are my distribution lines in my neighborhood. Send me a picture of them. Like, show me like where they are in my neighborhood. Tell me about them. Like, when were they created? How long have they been there? What are the problems that are going on with these particular poles in my neighborhood? Just really personalize it to me. I don't know if you do that through like a mailer or what have you, or if you make it more high tech, if it's something that comes through your phone. But the idea is that if you get people to buy into their infrastructure in their community, they may be willing to pay a little bit more on their bill for it, right? Because it becomes something that they know, they engage with. It may be very specific to people that are sort of nerdy and like things like that.
Okay, we need
myself
we
included.
have a market for that.
Well, we know, right?
We are the market for them. You are the Brute Squad.
So,
But especially, just kind of building on your first idea, if we begin the indoctrination early, people will already be engaged, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Build it young with the
Education. I said
kids,
indoctrination.
Right? Like
So
my
I
meant
7-year-old, if she
indoctrination,
gets a
but-
mailer about some distribution lines, I guarantee you it's a distribution line or a pole, somehow that'll be exciting. It's like, that's in my neighborhood, and I know that place,
See,
right?
the problem I have with it is if I get a mailer, I can promise you it's going to
It's
go
gonna go in
directly into the recycling bin.
Yeah.
That's why they call it
Yeah.
direct mail.
Is that why?
Direct into recycling. I was going to.
I've learned a lot
I hear
today.
you.
No, I made that up. As a wholesale power guy, I feel like I'm obligated here to say a little that this is similar to the subscriber PTO transmission model into CAISO, where transmission line is built into California Independent System Operator, delivers into CAISO, and is part of the CAISO system, but does not increase costs for transmission in the market.
There you go with that, yeah.
Because it's paid for by the subscriber. It's paid for by, well, in this case, the one example is the Sierra Madre Chokecherry wind project, that 6 gigawatt Wyoming wind project, basically building its own line into CAISO. Delivers into CAISO, it's part of the CAISO system, but it doesn't.
Doesn't play the tack.
Yeah, yes, thank you. That's what I couldn't think. Yes,
Transmission
doesn't pay the
access
tax.
charge.
Yes, doesn't pay the tax.
Yep.
Or it doesn't increase the tax.
Yep.
Participant, community transmission.
Community transmission. I was more interested in baking the marketing side of this because I do really enjoy. I think Washington Department of Natural Resources has this Twitter account, which does a really good job of marketing like Washington's natural resources. And I was thinking of it like, oh, this is a marketing campaign built around your distribution poles in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah,
And
I
you get
love that
people to
idea. Yep.
think of it as like, kind of like there's the community garden and there's also this community infrastructure. And you got to figure out the marketing and how to get there.
Yeah, that's what I really enjoyed about it.
YIMBY.
Oh, it's a YIMBY account.
That's how you create YIMBYs.
What's a YIMBY?
Insta YIMBY.
Yes, in my backyard.
I have not heard that acronym.
Really?
It's always known in my bag.
Oh, you're
Behind the
Way
times.
healthier
you're
life.
so innocent
Well, I don't do Twitter. Maybe that's part of it.
that
Good
you're
choice.
way better off
Do
for
Twitter?
it.
Is
I
that even how you
promise.
say it?
That's how at our age. That's how we say it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, I really liked the idea of like the getting a meme with the local distribution line, showing it to the kids. Or I don't really want the kids to have their own phone, but yeah, I love that aspect of it, the marketing.
You can
around
print it out and show it to them, just like Grandma used to make, right?
Just like Grandma used to do.
Now Grandma shares memes.
And you
Yeah.
can do that, and in the same text stream, you can get the text to bid. Oh, look at this poor pole.
Put it
Look at this
together.
poor distribution line. Oh, it's really stressed right now. I'll give you $5, and you can turn off all your stuff so that this pole doesn't burn. That got dark. Ugh, that got dark.
No, but I like how you connect it, and it also connects to the higher level idea about increasing the education. Because if you're getting all this information, you're going to have more questions, and you're going to be learning more. What are all these things?
Definitely half-baked ideas.
And it was fun. Anything else you wanted to add before we close it out?
I enjoyed this conversation.
I enjoyed the half-baked ideas. It was good.
I did too.
This
Thank
is
you.
fun. This is a good
Yeah.
new segment.
Good.
I like
Well, thank you for your effort, your preparation, participation. I hope you feel seen, heard, valued, and appreciated. Do you feel seen and heard, Ben?
I do, Paul. I always do.
Good. Do you feel valued and appreciated, Lea?
I sure do.
Matt, do you feel like you belong? Are you glad to be here? Do you feel
Occasionally, yeah. I'm glad to be here, yeah.
good?
Thank you.
Public Power Underground is a co-production of News Data and Seattle City Light. The views and half-baked ideas are not the views of Seattle City Light, News Data, or the organization of the guests appearing on Public Power Underground.
Maybe we should have
They
started
may
with
not
that.
even be reflective of the guests' views, frankly. Quite yet. I don't know. I don't know that they're.
I'd like
oh
to
my-
disown my own views.
Yeah, I think maybe.
None of my ideas were actual ideas that I subscribe to, just for the record.
Yeah, I have no ideas or opinions about anything.
I quite frankly think text to bid is a great half-baked idea, and I hope I bake it more. Public Power Underground for electric utility enthusiasts. Public Power Underground, it's work to watch.
Sometimes it's a bust, but we'll roll on, enthusiasts, roll on. Roll on, enthusiasts, roll on.
Public Power Underground is a production of Seattle City Light and News Data. The views expressed here are our own and not the official views of Seattle City Light, Tacoma Power, News Data, or the organization of the guests also appearing on Public Power Underground. Public Power Underground is electric utility and electric utility adjacent news from a power department's perspective. Today's episode was written and produced by Paul Dockery and Almaz Nagesh, and it's edited and published by the stellar team at Pioneer Utility Resources, with sound mixing by Lucas Smith and video editing by Brendan Delzer. Our theme song, Roll On Enthusiasts, was rewritten, performed, and recorded by Aaron Guillory and Ian Bledsoe. You don't have to be subscribed to News Data's weekly newsletters to get this podcast, but it sure makes the podcast make a lot more sense. Public Power Underground for electric utility enthusiasts. Public Power Underground, it's work to watch.
Yes, roll on. We bring in some people way smarter than us. Those in the industry with knowledge to trust.